Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today I'm going to give you my best 5 starting leveling guides for the Rogue, and that's going to cover the Bladedancer, the Marksman, and the newest mastery that will be added at 1.0, the Falconer. Now for the Falconer, I have a couple of leveling builds for you. They're going to be put together in the planner as they aren't accessible right now, so I can't actually give you gameplay footage of it. One of them, we have a little clip of it that I can show you that's been revealed. However, we're going to go through the build planner and try and explain it as best I can there to give you a rough picture of what it is that you're going to want to do. For the others, we'll have the normal video footage of the gameplay for you so that you can see what it's like before you actually go try it. Now again, these are going to be the best starter builds that I can give you in terms of not requiring uniques, not needing a lot to get going, and feeling really good starting from level 1 all the way into the end game. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Coming in at number 1, we have the Shadow Dagger Bladedancer, and with this one, it pushes extremely fast. This one takes off as soon as you get started as a Bladedancer, allowing you to have all of those Shadow Daggers going off. All you have to do is shift. Your shift will make shadows and use Shadow Cascade. Your shadows, of course, also use Shadow Cascade, and when that happens, they throw out tons of knives, getting tons of hits, and each one of those hits are applying Shadow Daggers that then have the plunge effect, which is a guaranteed crit. It also scales with all added melee and throwing damage. It has multiple tags which allow you to scale its damage extremely efficiently and quickly through the campaign, doing tons of damage and speed running through the campaign and into the end game. In the end game, it also has great success there with being one of the fastest speed farmers in the game, as well as good single target damage. So whether it's bossing you want to do or just speed farming the monos for a ton of extra drops and rewards, either one of those will work great for this build, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't played it before. Coming in at number 2, we have the Marksman Flurry Multishot proc. Now this has been bugged for a good portion of the 9.0 series of patches, in which the attack speed scaling gets absolutely bonkers, making it feel much better than what it will. In 1.0, we expect this to be fixed. It's still a really good build, and in the end game you can mix it up with the Bow Mage having the Reign of Winter unique. However, for leveling, it is a ton of fun because you have so many projectiles and it makes it extremely easy to clear out the screen. You also get access to Flurry right off the bat, and you can have it proccing multi-shot before you even unlock that skill, and then scaled all the way through the campaign, especially with its shotgun of projectiles allowing you to take out single targets extremely easily. And then of course with all of its projectiles for its AoE, you can also have full screen clear. It is a ton of fun to play if you are into bow builds, and I definitely recommend giving it a shot. Coming in at number 3, we have the Hail of Arrows Marksman, and this one comes together really well. It's very easy to put together, and it's a little bit different than all the other arrow builds because with this one as a marksman, it's more dot damage that you're doing, especially with Hail of Arrows being a cast and forget skill where you cast it, it does damage in a single area, but you can continue to run around while it's going off, allowing you to use other skills. For speed running through the campaign and into the end game, you just fire it off and then let enemies chase you and run through it. They'll die as they go through it. And then for bosses and single targets, you can cast it on them because most bosses don't move around too much, allowing you to dodge their mechanics and move around while you're still doing damage to them. Overall, it's a very powerful build capable of doing all of the content in the game. At the same time, it can be a fun playstyle if you like leaving quote traps, because you can just leave it behind you as you go. With that in mind, it's very powerful, and again, I think you'll have a ton of fun playing it, so if you haven't already, definitely give it a try. Coming in at number 4, we have Volka's Blast Rain Marksman. Now this is another marksman leveling guide, however, this is also going to be based around using Explosive Trap, one of the new skills coming for the Falconer in 1.0, and as you can see on the screen, it's a very fast-paced, very explosive-like build. You basically are calling down using your Explosive Trap arrows from the sky, which hit the ground, look like they explode doing the traps, and then you can also see that all those traps and hits that you're doing proc Detonating Arrow and Icicles from the Reign of Winter bow, hitting other enemies, and you just have a ton of projectiles going all over the place. Overall, it looks to be a very fast-paced, very quick build, and hopefully in 1.0 we all give this one a shot because it looks to be a ton of fun. And coming in at number 5, we have a Falconer leveling build for you. Now this one's completely theory crafted, and all that I can give you at the moment is going to be the build planner for it. We don't have any footage or any way to show you how it actually works in the game, but of course after 1.0 I'm sure that guide will come out extremely fast. We do have experience with ballista, and we know that ballista can be very powerful, and with the synergies and other ways to be able to proc and summon ballista through Explosive Trap, this should end up being a really good, easy leveling guide. So to go ahead and go over it and the skills that you'd be using, you get Explosive Trap relatively early. You only have to have 5 points into the Falconer in order to gain access to this, and as soon as you gain access to it, you can spec it to actually have a chance whenever a trap goes off to summon a ballista up to a 20% chance, and this will only consume half of ballista's actual cost. So it actually makes ballistas cheaper to have them procced through using Explosive Trap. Now remember, you get plenty of traps. You're actually going to be throwing 3 traps at a time, so you're going to have lots of them constantly going off. You can have a maximum amount of traps, which basically means once you've exceeded the maximum traps, they start exploding every time you cast it. And then of course you turn this into a bow skill, which allows you to scale bow damage and stuff, and inside of the ballista tree you can have it actually take some of your damage ratio, and since it is a bow minion and you're scaling a bow with Explosive Trap, it seems to be a really good synergy there between using Explosive Trap and a ballista. The other thing with ballista is not only is it getting some of your base crit and some of your damage ratio, but you can scale it with dex extremely easily. It actually gets more damage and increased area per point of dex, and dex is one of the easiest stats and what the rogue is all based about, especially for its dodge. So you should be able to scale it extremely easily with damage. Again, it has a huge mana cost by default, so having it proc for half its mana cost through your Explosive Trap seems like a good way to have your traps going off doing damage, and then of course having ballistas pop up and do their damage. And then on top of that, since you are a Falconeer, you'll also have access to the Falcon. And going over a lot of the nodes inside the Falcon tree seems like it's going to be extremely powerful. First off, the very first point you can put into Falconers, it gives the Falcon damage per level and damage per dex. This means that you're already scaling dex to have Ballista do more damage, your Falcon is going to do more damage. On top of that, every level you gain, the Falcon also gets a more damage multiplier. So having 2 different more modifiers here for damage is absolutely huge and only requires 1 point. On top of that, you can also have it scale your highest damage. So even though the Falconer here is melee and going to be doing a lot of melee attacks for you, and you're going to be scaling bow for your ballista, your Falcon actually gets a portion of that. So your say increased bow damage is your highest, it now applies to your Falcon's damage as general. So if you have 1,000% increased bow damage, that's going to give your Falcon 1,000% increased damage, which will affect its melee skills. Of course, with some points here, you can do that for crit chance as well, and also for crit multi, so you can really buff that up. On top of that, inside of Explosive Trap, you can give your Falcon a 15% damage buff per trap that's gone off recently, on top of reducing its cooldown for its skills to use, like Dive Bomb, which is another skill that we'll spec into, but that would be later into the campaign. So overall, really good synergies here between getting some of your damage, getting your crit chance, getting your crit multi. If you put that on top of the fact that with Avian Arsenal and the Falconer's Mark, you can actually give it just a percentage of your character's damage as well. So lots of ways to scale that Falconer damage up with both decks, and then of course with all of your own character stats. Same thing that you can do with Ballista. So overall, it seems like a very powerful build. If you throw that into Dive Bomb, which also has a very high amount of damage effectiveness added, you're going to be able to have Dive Bomb come down for those single targets and absolutely destroy it, while your Ballista and your Explosive Traps would be more of your AoE killer. Overall, it should be a very quick, easy, and fun leveling experience, and definitely something new to try. And as soon as we can get some footage of it, we'll definitely be throwing that out there. I'm starting with the Falconer, so this is probably exactly how I'm going to level, and I'll do a 1 to 76 leveling guide for you guys on the very first day of launch. With that in mind, that's going to be all of the builds that I have for you for your starters for the Rogue. If you haven't tried any of them, I definitely recommend all of them because they're all a ton of fun, no matter which mastery you end up choosing. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys to it. Let me know in the comments below if you plan on starting as a Rogue and which mastery you're going to be going for. As always, stay safe and have a good one.